let's get on with the show. Now, I'm really happy to welcome Clinton Marshall from Raritan, that's now part of Legrand, up to our virtual podium. Clinton, are you still with me after that long intro?
Yes, I am. How are you? How is everyone?
I'm okay. I'm on the other side of the world to you, but I'm really excited to hear what you're going to be talking about. Clinton has 16 years of experience with Raritan as well, spending a long time in that business and having seen the complete technology evolutions that are going on in the market. And I hope today he's going to share a load of his insights, especially about what's been going on in the last 6 months, where the world's changed and adoption of technology has changed, right? And remote management, that's really top of the billing at the moment as a technology. If you read all of the research that's coming out, there's been a revolution in thinking about this. Maybe not necessarily technology, but certainly thinking. So, Clinton, I'm going to hand the reins over to you.
Thanks a lot, George. Look, thanks for having me here. It's good to be able to share, at least from a vendor's point of view, what we're observing in the market today. So this presentation is about integrating existing technology that you have to be able to securely remote manage your IT infrastructure. Sometimes we lose track of what we have invested in, or we forget the reasons why we've purchased something. This is also true in businesses. One example I look at is, we all have a smartphone, or most smartphones, and the capability of that smartphone has increased over the years. So, and it's increased by way of applying a software update. And those of you who are an Apple fan, such as myself, just last night, Apple announced the release of the next iOS, which is being made available tomorrow. So the thing is that in a consumer world, it's all very good and well to keep up to date with the new gadgets, gizmos, and software updates. But the same thing exists within business. And often we will get a consultant to advise us of the best of breed technologies. And this is key for data centers, as these environments in many cases are classified as providing essential services, and you wouldn't want to put anything less in such a critical environment. But we can easily lose track of the technologies that we have invested in, and the fact that many of those technologies that we have invested in have been built for exactly what we're experiencing today, and that is remote access. So when we look at taking a rack, for example, this rack is an explosion of one rack that shows a whole bunch of different elements that are inside the rack, from power, environmental monitoring, the networking equipment, the server, the compute, the power, and the out-of-band management tools. And all of these are sold separately, but in many cases, they all integrate together. And I'm going to share a bit of, real-world insight to my observations to what our customers and businesses are either struggling with or what they continue to do without realizing what they've already got. So the first thing we need to do is to understand what customers typically maintain within their IT environments. On screen is a 2D and 3D rack elevation screenshot from our DSIM tool. Rack PDUs these days are typically connected to IP networks, and these are connected, and these are maintained usually by way of firmware updates, or these Rack PDUs are used for doing the maintenance of the connected IT devices. How, you might ask? Well, by gracefully shutting down the equipment, then powering the equipment off, and then back on again, maybe in the correct sequence to ensure the correct operation of the connected IT equipment across one or more racks. Networking equipment is at the core of every business, and sometimes they are the most difficult to maintain because they have the potential to cause the biggest impact on an outage or the loss of connectivity and interrupting the business continuity. So then we've got the IT devices, your standard servers, compute. These are all inside the rack, and they're all powered, and they all need maintenance. These business tools, like our like the ones we're using today, this is all running on physical IT infrastructure, whether it be in customers' private computer rooms, data centers, or shared facilities. They're all running on physical infrastructure. Because in a way, there isn't really anything controversial statement, not really anything such as a cloud. The cloud exists on physical infrastructure in various forms. So just like our cars, most of the things that have been running for years, servers need maintenance as well. And it could be the maintenance that's required after an incident. And you probably have invested in some of these tools to be able to do this maintenance. So I've got a poll question that I'd like to put out to the audience. And the poll question is, does your organization mainly use physical or virtual servers? So I'll just give it a few seconds for the poll to reach your screens. If you would like to participate and see the results from our audience, you may be surprised. I think it's a good statistic to see maybe where our customers and partners live. So, does your organization mainly use physical or virtual servers? Mainly physical, mainly virtual, or a mix? And we'll just close off the poll now. And I guess we get to see the results. Okay, good. So with this, it's as I would have expected, a lot of customers using a mix of physical and virtual. One thing to note, and again, it's maybe comes down to a lot of the themes and topics that I've seen today. This event is that the perception that a company only runs virtual servers, there is still physical infrastructure and power that's consumed, and memory and hard disks and storage devices that are making those virtual servers available. So it's really important that you just don't think that a server or an application is there and available because it's virtual. That's the wrong mindset really to have. So what I'd like to bring to the surface is how we remote access these devices or IT equipment. Because when you, what you have, so I'm just going to start that one slide again, is what you may not have accounted for is the fact that you may need to securely remote access your IT infrastructure. And by accessing the IT infrastructure, it's done over an IP network. And most of these devices are considered IT devices. Some businesses are even needing to remote access operational technology environments like computer rooms, factories, and labs. So even though you might be running virtual servers mainly, there's still networking infrastructure. There's still routers, firewalls, switchgear. There's still a number of different infrastructure that is making those virtual machines work and is giving you access to those virtual machines. So in summary, any device that has a human interface connection, like a keyboard, video, mouse connection, or a serial port. Now, virtual machines don't have such things, but there are ways that you access and maintain these devices. And there's even ways of getting hardware access to those, but I'll touch on that later. So there are different types of remote access, and not all remote access tools are the same. And sometimes our customers don't understand that, well, unless it's too late. Don't get me wrong. I think the software tools really provide great function and integration, but when the core network goes down, those software tools are unavailable. And one thing I forgot to mention is not all software tools are compatible across all different IT devices within an organization. For example, a network switch does not have a remote desktop software that allows you to remote in and see the desktop GUI of a router or switch. So you might use SSH for that. The point is that there's different types of ways to get access to. But if the network is unavailable, then what does one do? Well, most organizations have got a secondary network or a dedicated network, sometimes referred to as out-of-band or OOB. And this is used by IT admins and network managers to be able to get access to the management, not necessarily the operational network, but more of a maintenance and system admin network. So there are different types of remote access tools, and on these out-of-band networks, you might typically be connecting embedded service processors or ESPs. These tools require additional network infrastructure and the associated costs and network overhead, and sometimes paid licenses are required to activate advanced features. And it's important to note that these are vendor dependent, meaning that you can't go and run a HP ILO card or interface and expect something that supports the same function to exist within a Dell or a Cisco or an IBM or other devices. They are specific to the hardware manufacturer of the device. And one thing that's difficult to, I guess, unless you're aware of this in the beginning, it's hard to sort of change. But there are ways that we help customers in designing and planning out their management procedures or maintenance procedures. One thing that is also important to note with embedded service processors, because they are made by different manufacturers, you've got different life cycle support, you've got different firmwares, you've got different capabilities and different licensing, and there's a lot of different things, and also different IP addresses. And the fact that if you had 100 servers, as an example, you're going to need 100 network ports, which is another several patch panels, another several structured cable runs, another several network switches, and cable trays to accommodate the cabling to connect up those embedded service processors. So with an alternate way is to use your existing KVM or serial console switch. Many customers have had a KVM switch in the past. Maybe they've put it in the back room or put it into storage, or maybe disposed of it because there's software tools that maybe provide different or better functionality. But as I mentioned before, when we bought a phone 5 years ago, by updating the software on that phone, we get more functionality. The same thing exists with KVM and serial console technology as well. And using these types of technology, it doesn't matter what the make and model of the server is, as long as it's got a keyboard interface, a mouse, a video interface, or a serial interface, which pretty much every IT device has. Otherwise, how does one interact with these devices for initial configuration, for crash cart, or for other functions? So, and these will work when the software or the servers are not working. So what we're trying to have people realize is that there is still ways to remotely access your IT infrastructure without the need for software, without the need for additional network infrastructure. And you may be surprised at the functionality that they provide. So why are customers still using hardware tools to maintain their infrastructure? Well, it's because of proven technology. KVM switches, just as one example, have been around for 40 odd years. And the simple function is being able to switch from one machine to another, just as if you were standing at the machine. And I started with Raritan 17 years ago. And when I started, we had just introduced the first network-connected enterprise-class KVM over IP switch. These switches are found today in many different environments, not just data centers. And we're seeing them being used in hospitals because a lot of hospitals have IT equipment that are running the medical equipment, and they need to get remote access to those devices. There's also labs, semiconductor industry. There's a lot of different places where you just need to get access to a machine just like you were standing next to it. And these switches are also being used in environments where technology is not typically being front of mind, for a milk or a food or water treatment facility. These are environments that you have never really thought of being an IT environment. So we've got another poll which I'd like to put out to the audience, which is relating to the current, I guess, conditions that we're all in now. Is since the pandemic began, you've remotely been accessing your IT infrastructure by A, installing and using software tools like Remote Desktop or VNC, or B, using hardware KVM or serial console switches that have IP connectivity, or maybe you're not using any tools and you're still working out how to fix that crashed server or application that's running in your office or running in your data center somewhere. So I'll leave the poll open for another 5 seconds, and appreciate your providing this feedback, because you may be surprised that of the results. So let's go on to the next and see the results. So, wow. So since the pandemic began, I think it's interesting that customers have gone, I need to get remote access. So the easiest tool or the easiest thing might be to do is to install some software or activate a built-in service such as RDP if you're primarily a Windows or Microsoft environment. It's good to see that an equal amount of you are using KVM switches or serial console. And I'll touch on to some examples on some of the benefits of that. And I feel sorry for 33% of you that have an empty toolbox and still wondering what to do. And hopefully this session will give you some pointers on what can be done. So a quick scenario that I wanted to put past you, and you may be familiar with it, is let's say yourself or a colleague comes to you and complains to the IT team that they can't access their application. That it's not working, it's not responding, the page can't be displayed, something's wrong. And the IT team typically know, the IT team would know what the IT device is that what they're referring to. So the IT team who's currently working from home says, well, I'm not getting a response from the server when I try to ping it. So what can I do? Well, I'm at home and I can't access the data center because maybe it's in another country. Maybe it's in a location that is just not accessible. So in this, what does the customer do? Typically, they would go to the server and maybe inspect the physical connections to make sure that they're connected. And if that's the case, what they might do is then pull up a crash cart and see what the problem is. They may be connecting their keyboard, monitor, and mouse into the back of the server to see what's going on. And in this case, we can see a blue screen of death. So sometimes they would pull the power off, switch it back on again. But this is all really hard to do when you're not at the server. So these days, this is where the sort of the theme of this presentation comes together, is that integrating of different technologies is really something that can help solve many problems. These days, network-connected rack PDUs that provide outlet-level switching provide the ability to control the power to the IT device it supplies. To see what's going on with the server, you would use a KVM switch and the correct interface to connect into those interfaces on that IT device to see what's going on. Now, the remote IT team can be seeing exactly what's happening on the server because they're seeing and connected to the keyboard, video, and mouse port. And they've got the ability to integrate the hardware tools and provide a single user interface to be able to see what the server's doing, power it off, power it back on again, watch the device boot up, and remotely diagnose the issue. This is something that it seems really simple, and I know, sometimes when I get home from work, or I'm home all the time at the moment, but sometimes you just want to reset your Wi-Fi because it's going slow, or you feel like your home internet connection just needs a reset. So it's without really thinking to turn it off, count to 10, and turn it back on again. But when you're responsible for the uptime of an application, a business tool or service, this is a real, challenge to be able to do this. And the one thing I want to mention here is security. Doing it securely. So network-connected rack PDUs are doing more than just power distribution these days. And on the Raritan and Servertech brands of Legrand, we've been doing network-connected power devices since 2007. And we've developed a platform that supports sensors, locks, cameras, as well as power metering and monitoring and control. And we often release free firmware updates to add support for newer devices, newer sensors, or newer technologies that have been implemented across the industry. So if you have invested in these devices in the past, you might be looking at a free firmware update to add support for the new TLS protocol, or the ability to log in with SSH keys, or the ability to integrate to your existing LDAP, Radius, or TACAS directory for authentication. And because these are integrating to things like rack access control with handles, keypads, cards, two-factor authentication, it's really playing a much bigger part than just powering the IT devices. With network-connected KVM and serial console switches, the functions of these haven't really changed over the years, or at least their core function. They're reliable, they work when the software tools don't, they have the ability to be integrated to power control for graceful shutdown, load shedding of non-critical equipment, sequencing up the IT equipment, all through one graphical user interface and one login. And when and with added security like two-factor authentication can now be supported with the free firmware update. So if you have invested in KVM technologies in the past, it might be worth looking at what your vendor or what your supplier is able to provide you, because you might actually save yourself a trip down to the data center, especially when you've got the same, if not more functionality than software tools have. The ability to virtually mount a USB drive, copy files to and from, all with an independent layer of security with hardware encryption. You don't get that with software. So most businesses have businesses across multiple locations, and the people with the skills and the experience to maintain the IT infrastructure are always remote, or they're now working from home. The fact is that this is a common type of business which has got one or two primary data centers, or they've got their IT infrastructure located across two physical different sites. Even if they're virtual machines, they're going to physically exist somewhere, or the data that they live on. And you've now got people that are got remote offices or working from home. And the people with the skills and experience to either rebuild a hard drive array, change the boot order of a server, remotely build a server from the operating system up. The skills of these people, I wouldn't say few and far between, they are just very far. There is a lot of these people that need to get access to this IT infrastructure, and using hardware tools gives you that same experience as if you were at the data center together. Looking to integrate, I've got another, this is only the last couple of slides here, but I think this last two that I've got here, I think is really a key message to take away from this, and that is somebody in your organization is already integrating something. And one example here, top right-hand corner, is some software that usually monitors when or application is running, not running, memory, hard drive full, network connected, network disconnected, vulnerability detected. There's so many different things that a network monitoring system does. In this example, if we had an incident occur on one of our servers, which is depicted down the bottom with the red incident icon, this event is being monitored by a network management system or network monitoring, Splunk, Nagios, Microsoft service. There's a whole bunch of different tools that are doing monitoring of your IT infrastructure. That software would then notify the IT admins of the problem. And these IT admins would go, okay, good to know what the problem is. Now, how do I get there to fix it? So with a hardware solution, you may integrate your KVM with the network management system, so that from the email that the network management system has sent to the IT admins, there's a link that gives them directly access to that IT device via the enterprise class KVM system, and allows them to access that IT device as if they were standing there, and allows them to remediate that incident and resolve it, or at least see what's going on and put the right plan in place to resolve it. The key thing here is using these types of tools, we're shortening the time it takes to respond to an incident. And we're also helping reduce the time it takes to repair, because you can get access to your IT infrastructure, whether it's your network switch that needs to be rebooted or reprogrammed, it's a VLAN has been, a wrong configuration has been applied, and you've lost connectivity to a certain segment of your network. There are so many different situations or scenarios that play out in businesses today. And you've got to ask yourself the question, if I had a software tool and I normally SSH to my box, is that the most secure way to do it? If I'm from home, can I direct RDP to my Windows server? And is that the best way to do it? Is it secure? The thing with a lot of these software technologies is they're usually the weakest link within the security policies or security tools within an organization. If you knew that you could have the same amount of function or capability that you have within your software tools, but within dedicated hardware devices that provide more functionality, more reportability, more control, and even more functionality, because you could start to use these KVM switches or serial console devices as, like, I've heard people use them as a jump box. You might have a highly secured, what's the word? It's like isolated network, and I forgot the term for it. Air-gapped. There we go. If you had an air-gapped network, an air-gapped network does not connect to anything. An air-gapped network may be a network inside of a hospital, or it could be just small mini network that's inside the radiation lab within a hospital that's running the CT machine. And that small air-gapped network does not have connectivity to the internet or any other network. It is purpose-built for the function of that application, which might be CT machine and server, storage, and other imaging devices, all on one network that need to work together. But in order to get access to those equipment on that network, well, software is not going to be of any use to you. That's where something like a KVM switch or a serial console switch, as well as an integrated power control device, would give somebody remote to that air-gapped network the ability to interact with those IT devices. And there's still no direct exposure to that network. So you've got all of your data sovereignty policies ticked. You've got your security guys satisfied. You've got a whole bunch of different things satisfied, and the ability to remotely access. And I'm not going to get into detail of the feature, function, benefit, but all I would say is that with all of these different moving parts within the organization or businesses today, there's really a challenge to try and update business processes and procedures to adopt the new technologies. So what I would say is look at your older technologies that have been around for years. The principles haven't really changed, but the way that you can use them has changed. So with that, I would say thank you for sticking around, and thank you for the feedback on those poll questions. I would have to say it wasn't overly of a surprise for me, but you may have been surprised at what you saw. So that completes my presentation. I think
I'm here, Clinton.
Any questions?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Brilliant. I really enjoyed your presentation, Clinton. If the point of a conference is to impart knowledge and give insights to the audience, you've certainly done that. Really nicely positioned. So I got an entry question here. Have you got any kind of like evidence of the take up of changes in practice since lockdown began? I mean, have you seen a marked swing in people using the technology they've got more, or is it still a message that needs to be bedded in?
That's a really good question. So from experience and what I've seen and what I've seen with our colleagues is, when this all started, we tried to reach out to customers and say, hey, now's the time to really look within to see how we're going to solve these problems, because there's no planes in the sky, we can't get to the data center. All of the things that I mentioned in this presentation, I think most of the customers that we've interacted with have experienced some level of pain, and the take up would be quite surprising. So we've been getting inquiries from organizations or even industries that have struggled to solve this problem. I won't name the customer, but the interesting thing is that a yogurt manufacturing, milk yogurt food manufacturer has all of these IT devices out in farms, but people with lockdowns in different cities are not able to were not able, and in some cases still not able to travel. But having the need to remotely access some of that, it's not really servers, it's more like PLC control systems, or being able to monitor if something needs to be reset or the water bucket's empty. There's a whole different that businesses or at least customers have come to us with problems, and it always comes down to, well, how do you normally solve the problem? How do you normally just fix it? And it would be, well, I just go there and I click a button and it's done. So, well, you can click that button, but you don't need to physically be there. So the adoption it's been a big learning curve. And I think I mentioned at the beginning, and one of the things that I found with some of yesterday's presentations was not just the slow uptake of certain governments and policies and procedures, but it also comes down to the experience of the people. I mean, myself, been around for years, but there are a lot of newcomers that are going through universities or courses or training, and they get placed into these businesses or into these roles without real world experience. And some of these people just are not aware of what was done 40 years ago or what was done even 10 years ago. So the uptake has been interesting, and it's probably been more of a learning curve for the industry, which is why I thought doing this presentation would be, I guess, insightful for some.
Yeah, so I'm taking on from that. There's also the idea, right, that some requirements have changed. I've picked up on a few of the events recently that there's this idea of we're trying to maintain the status quo of our infrastructure, but we're not there, right? So you're coming to challenges with that, as you've just been explaining. And then there's this other view that the things that we're looking at are changing as well because of maintenance habits have changed, right? So how you view that infrastructure and how you go in has changed. Have you been seeing that as well, that there's some new things that the people are looking for that they didn't necessarily need this infrastructure for before?
Yes. Yes. I don't think there's any, but yes. And I think until people know or have experienced a problem and it's their responsibility to solve it or fix it, there is not really a need to seek support or reach into that toolbox to see what you've got. So, yes, is the absolute.
And for people that can, like, so as well, the person that's operating at this level within an organization sits within a hierarchy, right? What help? What can help that person explain these requirements to the rest of their organization or get organizational change happening as well? Because I've got the feeling sometimes that people are left to their own devices, and sometimes they're left in a bit of a corner on some of these issues. How do they come out a bit and get more support from their organizations?
I think, short of creating an incident and a problem that cost a business money, I think what one would need to do is go back and look at and create a report, make sort of a business case, look at small incidents in the past, do some research. Like I know there was an article on DCD about a UPS fire in the London data center. There's all sorts of things all the time. What it takes is for a business to ask the question, what if this would happen to us? What would it mean? How do I not necessarily prevent it from happening, but how can I at least be aware that change is happening within my environment? And my key message there is it's all about monitoring. You can't manage anything if you don't know what's happening. So the key is monitor, know what's going on, then make an informed, educated, data-backed decision on what to do next and what is the best way for your business. And it's not one answer for all businesses, because every business has different processes, different procedures, different operational, different security requirements. So there isn't one all, but what I would say is that the infrastructure or the tools are generally the same. It's how one uses those tools to the best of their ability. So it's really either create an incident yourself. I would advise on doing that, or look back. Look at ask the management. Where have we had problems before? When have we had a cyber attack? Are we being attacked now? And and I would like to just mention this one thing before I be quiet, is there's one really interesting thing that I've learned through this pandemic. And yes, cybersecurity is up, but how do you know that your network or your IT equipment or servers specifically are under attack? You could rely on software to do that, but there is one core thing That is power. When something is under attack, denial of service, the CPU usage goes up, the fans go higher, and you basically are consuming more power. If you're not monitoring the power usage of that IT device, you can't accurately determine that situation. If you were monitoring the power usage over the last 12 months, and for some reason, unknown reason, the power is now increasing just on that one server at a point in time, you could now relate that incident or that data to other events that are happening maybe on your network switches and be able to pinpoint exactly where you're being attacked and be able to back that up with additional data. And it's these types of things that will make businesses aware that they need to do something. And that's why we have people like ourselves to help sort of inform and help customers along this journey.
That's a really interesting place to finish this. A really good piece of knowledge imparted about how learning from one system can impact another problem that you're having. Clinton Marshall, it's been great to host you on DCD Singapore. Again, you've been coming to this event for a number of years. It's just virtual, so people have been able to benefit from your insights from further afield. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you, everyone.
Now, on with the show. Next session that starts in about 14 minutes, we've got Andy Lawrence from the Uptime Institute, who is going to be looking at the post-pandemic data center world. And I know, because I've seen the slide deck, that he's going to be touching upon remote management and DSIM and these kind of technology areas as one of the keys of growth in this post-pandemic data center environment. This is the first time this presentation has been made. It's off the back of a lot of recent research the Uptime's been doing. So hopefully I'll see you in that session in a bit. I'll be introducing it, and directly after we'll be having a round table looking at the skills gap as a result of the post-pandemic environment. So thanks all for listening in.